It's located in a farmer's pasture on a pile of rock. You'll see that we're fairly high on a hill here, and in the background you may be able to see Lake Champlain, and in the distance right through you can maybe just make out the top of Mansfield Mountain in Vermont. We're not too far from the village of Keeseville. The light at night isn't too bad here. We get some light, background light from the air base, but I'm afraid pretty soon we're going to have some extra light because they're putting in a housing development right down here. You can see the machinery working there now. And I'm afraid at that time it will be too much light in here to do much useful photography with the telescope. I will go down now and take a closer look.
What? What's going right now?
You'll notice the snow fence around the structure. That's there for two reasons. One is to keep the cows from being too curious and knocking the thing down. They're pretty heavy animals, and they got a lot of curiosity. Another reason is it does help protect it from the heavy winds. When being up here on this hill, they get a lot of heavy winds. I really haven't had much damage from the wind until this last recent windstorm, and then that blew out a panel in the back side. To keep the telescope covered with the tarp, even though it's inside here, it's because my roof has a hole in it. If you'll notice, those triangular panels do not come all the way up. I needed to leave a hole there, so if I wanted to view something straight above me, I would be able to do it. If the panels went all the way up, there would be no way to view the straight up direction. I was going to put a cover of some sort on there, but it would have turned out to be kind of clumsy. So I just decided to cover it with a tarp, and that takes care of most of the problems. You'll notice there are numbers on the tops of the panels. This thing comes apart with like hinges on each panel is separate, and so even though they're supposed to be identical, they don't go together well if you try to put them in different places. Okay, to keep the roof panels from blowing open, they are on hinges with a cable. Cable runs up from there. It runs through hooks that are hooked to the inside of the roof panels. Getting a little out of focus here. Let's see. You can see that it runs through, and then there are these buttons which also turn and keep the one panel from sliding past the other. One or two panels, depending on what part of the sky you're viewing. If the part of the sky you're viewing happens to be on the border between two panels, then you need to open two panels. To open the panel, we'll open this one first. You need to turn the buttons so they'll slide by each other. And then I have these little wire with the hooks on the end that can hook into these eye screws, and the panel nearly opens up. You'll notice that the big wire that's used to secure the roof panels also is a double safety net, because these panels can only go down so far if something happens to you happen to let go or whatever. And the panel opens out like this. I have a little stool here that I move around. It's not so easy to do it in the dark, I have to admit. But when you're used to it, your eyes are dark adapted, it really isn't that bad. And usually you know what you're doing in one evening, you just put them down and leave them down and put them up later. You get a pretty good section of the sky this way. This telescope cannot be used for any terrestrial viewing, only the sky is visible. Okay, this telescope, as cheap as it was to make, it has one distinction. I don't know, I know there are several other amateur telescopes mounts that have fixed eyepiece, but I doubt if there are any with a fixed eyepiece that can be made for as little money as this one has. As you'll notice, there's a point right here on the tube where there was a hole. That was the original position of the eyepiece on the tube when it was purely a Newtonian reflector. The tube is made out of plywood. It's got 3 sides, makes it very rigid, also very heavy. Probably a lot of overkill for only having a 6-inch mirror, but the size of the mirror is not as important as the ability to point the mirror and keep it steady. We have now the mirror that is the first reflection mirror, first diagonal, is mounted on the end of these 2 screws, and it's set up so that it reflects down through the center of the declination axis. You'll see this thing turns, and when the mirror is in, it will stay in any position. I have put a fan belt around through here to give it extra friction. It makes it a little easier to work with, but it doesn't detract from its usefulness. This fan belt can be taken off, of course, by just turning these small buttons. You'll notice now that this turns around the polar axis. Again, it wouldn't do this if the mirror were in the telescope, because it was balanced with the mirror in the telescope. This declination axis, or rather this polar axis, is pointed directly toward the celestial pole. It was first roughed in by viewing through down here at the North Pole. You'll notice that this is offset slightly because we're at a little less than 45 degrees, and to get it so it would track a little better than that, it was at 2 different times during the evening. A particular star was viewed, and after several evenings I was able to line this up using these 3 screws. I was able to line this up a little more closely with the pole star. Since then, the wind in pushing the structure has moved this large pole slightly so it doesn't track as well as it did. That pipe is 8 feet long and goes all the way down to bedrock and has 5 feet of rocks piled all around it. It's 5 feet deep into the rocks before I put the floor on. You wouldn't think that the wind would have moved it, but it did slightly. And I haven't readjusted it. My original intention was to use this as a camera mount, and I never got a clock drive on it. This is mounted, this small board is mounted on a hinged door springs, and usually the friction of it is sufficient to hold this from turning when the thing is balanced. Again, that's when the mirror is in. Right now I have the mirror out for, I had to send it away to get it repolished. The eyepiece, this is the plane of the focal plane of the mirror when it's focused for infinity. And you'll see these little attachments. There's an eyepiece assembly that fits right down on here. There's another mirror, diagonal mirror in here that bends the light that would be coming from the mirror down to here and bends it up so that it's pointing with in a fixed direction. Always, your eyepiece is always pointing in this direction, regardless of which way your telescope is pointed. Now I'm going to show how easily this can be turned to point at any particular point in the sky. Rather than having a finder scope, I sight like the same as a person would with a gun, and that gets, with low power, gets me close enough to what I want to see to lock onto it. So you see how the thing operates. You get some idea of how that it's made fairly inexpensively. You can see there are no real expensive parts here. Most of it is junk. These large assembly here has 3 bearings in it. They're large truck bearings I bought for almost nothing because they were taken out of the truck for routine maintenance, and they could serve very well. This is pipe coupling. This telescope comes apart right here from this section, so the tube comes apart if this nut is turned. There was some problem in winding it up and keeping the mirrors in alignment in doing this, but that problem was solved. There's also some bearings down in this, encased in here and up in here, which hold the polar, which give the steadiness to the and smooth turning to the polar axis. Most of the structure is made from wood, except this part here. You'll see up here is an adjustable weight. This is all lead, and it just balances through this point where this is mounted, and the mirror. And I poured lead into the bottom of this pipe until this balanced. So this was hot lead poured down into this part of the pipe, and it gives it a fairly good, very, very good balance. When I say when all the mirrors are in it, it will stay wherever you put it. Even without the friction plate or without this belt, it will stay put when the mirrors are in.